a call to action on climate change, and measures to address gender-based violence. You're tuned to Jamaica House Weekly. I'm Anthony Morgan. Prime Minister Andrew Holness welcomed global talks on climate change last week, stating that the need for meaningful action had never been greater. Mr. Holness was participating in the virtual Leaders Summit on Climate hosted by United States President Joe Biden. The Prime Minister said Jamaica had enhanced its contribution to achieving a target of 60% reduction in emissions by 2030.
We, like all small island developing states and many developing countries, remain committed to advancing climate action, and we are determined to build forward stronger, better, and greener.
Prior to Prime Minister Holness's presentation, President Biden gave a commitment to double financing to developing countries by 2024. The current annual contribution is $100 billion. Mr. Holness welcomed the announcement, but stressed that while increased financial support was critical, it would not be sufficient to address the needs of small island developing states unless it was accessible and flexible enough to target support for their vulnerabilities. As such, he outlined steps that could be taken to address hurdles. 1.
The establishment of a global disaster fund to help SIDS recover and manage disaster risk. 2. The development of innovative risk-informed financing for disasters and climate events. 3. The inclusion of vulnerability measures as the prime consideration in determining access for financing rather than only income criteria. And 4. The scaling up of debt for climate adaptation swaps to simultaneously address climate crises and the systemic debt issues affecting already burdened developing countries.
Mr. Holness closed by calling on major economies to play their part towards an equitable climate financing mechanism while engaging the private sector. On Friday, the Prime Minister participated in another high-level meeting of country leaders. The Caribbean and America's Commonwealth Leaders Roundtable centered on accelerating economic recovery and sustainable markets. Prime Minister Andrew Holness addressed the Parliament last week on the vexing issues of domestic abuse and gender-based violence. He announced that 6 new domestic violence intervention centers would be opened this year in partnership with the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP). 4 such facilities are already in place at designated police stations where professional volunteers provide counseling to persons involved in domestic conflict. Mr. Holness said there were more than 1,500 referrals in 2020.
We have a duty of care to provide protection to those seeking our help, and we must respond appropriately to all reports of domestic violence.
Meanwhile, he said more than 300 supervisors and managers of the police force had been trained in domestic violence intervention since 2020, and another 168 in the last 3 months. Further to that, a national coordination unit has been established within the Community Safety Branch, which will capture data and ensure standardization and interface with external partners.
We are strengthening the existing processes and procedures for dealing with domestic violence and have instituted additional reporting and accountability measures.
The Prime Minister said training would continue under the Spotlight Initiative with nurses, police officers, personnel within the justice system, and other frontline workers. This will facilitate a fulsome understanding of gender-based violence and is part of the 2021 approved work plan for the Spotlight Initiative. And finally, Prime Minister Andrew Holness was among several Jamaicans expressing sadness at the passing of veteran journalist and broadcaster Michael Sharp. Mr. Sharp, who was 65, died on April 20 while in hospital. In tribute, Prime Minister Holness said that for almost 40 years, Michael Sharp dedicated himself to the craft of journalism and keeping Jamaica informed. His media career spanned Television Jamaica as a news anchor, talk show host on Radio Jamaica, The Gleaner, and the Jamaica Information Service. At the time of his passing, Michael Sharp was News Operations Manager at Jamaica News Network JNN. And that's it for Jamaica House Weekly. Be sure to join us next time for more of the news stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister.